sis. This is your wake-up call, not from the alarm clock, but from heaven itself. You've been surviving long enough, moving through days with a heavy heart and tired hands, trying to make sense of your purpose while managing the pressure. But today, God is saying, let me lead. Not just on the Sundays when your worship is strong and the choir is singing your favorite song, but on the Mondays when everything feels mundane, on the Wednesdays when the week gets heavy, and especially on the days when you're tempted to give up. God doesn't just want to be part of your day. He wants to lead it, shape it, fill it, and work through it. This isn't about perfection. It's about positioning. It's about waking up and choosing divine direction over self-dependence. Because when God leads your day, peace follows, purpose follows, power follows. So let's stop letting fear, pressure, and people take the wheel. It's time to let today be a God-led day. It is a heart that is not simply a quiet heart or a still one. It is a heart that has chosen to yield its will, desire, and expectations in exchange for divine alignment. When we speak of God-led days, we are not referring to a schedule that suddenly erases challenges or detours, but to a posture that welcomes God's presence and leadership into every layer of our lives. Surrender is the spiritual act of saying, God, I trust you more than I trust me. In choosing to live from that declaration before the demands of the day even begin, this act is not passive. It is the fiercest kind of strength to wake up and release control, to offer your emotions, thoughts, plans, and uncertainties to a holy God, is to access the supernatural confidence that says, if God is leading, then I am covered. The beauty of a surrendered heart is that it is a door, not a destination. It opens us to revelation, to peace that our striving could never earn. It tells God that he has not just been invited to observe the day, but to orchestrate it. Surrender is more than prayer. It is the tone of the soul. It is the difference between checking a box and checking in with the Spirit. It transforms what could be a chaotic morning into a moment of holy alignment. It is saying, before I reach for my phone, I reach for you. Before I pick up the weight of responsibility, I pick up the truth of who you are. A surrendered heart is not defined by feelings, but by decision. It's not determined by how spiritual you feel, but by how intentional you are about giving God authority over the day he created. When the heart is surrendered, our vision begins to change. We stop needing everything to go our way, and we start looking for God's way in everything. We start asking not what's on my agenda, but what's on yours. This kind of shift doesn't just make us more spiritual, it makes us more stable. A surrendered heart isn't tossed around by unexpected emails or detours on the way to work. It's not overwhelmed by interruptions or intimidated by obstacles. It has already decided that God's plan will prevail and that his presence is enough. That kind of heart can find peace in pressure, direction in uncertainty, and hope in hard places. It's not because the day is easy. It's because the heart is anchored. The surrendered heart is also the birthplace of obedience. You can't truly follow God without first surrendering the need to lead yourself. Obedience becomes less of a burden and more of a blessing when the heart has already yielded. When God asks you to take a risk, to love someone who's hard to love, to forgive someone who doesn't deserve it, to wait when you want to run, you have to. Because you know that he loves you so much that when you want to run, He has to. A surrendered heart doesn't argue. It aligns. That alignment positions us for blessing we couldn't produce on our own. It also protects us from the pain of our own assumptions and pride. God's leadership is never meant to control us. It's meant to carry us. But he cannot lead a heart that refuses to follow. Surrender also opens space for healing. A surrendered heart is an honest one. It doesn't hide behind religious language or performance. It admits where it's afraid, where it's tired, where it's bitter, where it's confused. And in that honesty, God meets us with healing. He doesn't require us to be perfect. He requires us to be present. A surrendered heart doesn't need to fake strength. It is okay saying, God, I'm weak today, but I trust you to be strong through me. That's the kind of heart God honors. That's the kind of posture that welcomes miracles. Not because we're qualified, but because we're available. Not because we have all the answers, but because we've given him access. In a world that glorifies hustle, a surrendered heart is radical. It says, I'm not my own source. It says, I don't have to manipulate outcomes. It says, I choose rest in the middle of pressure. That kind of surrender isn't lazy, it's discipline. It takes discipline to pause and pray. It takes courage to wait when everything in you wants to push forward. It takes maturity to trust that the God who led you into the day will carry you through it. A surrendered heart has learned the rhythm of grace. It doesn't overextend itself to be everything for everyone. It stays in tune with the Spirit and trusts that obedience is enough. A God-led day doesn't begin with your calendar. It begins with your heart. Before you manage time, you have to manage posture. You have to decide what kind of spirit will lead your responses, your energy, your interactions. A surrendered heart allows you to walk in rooms differently. You don't have to dominate conversations. You can discern them. You don't have to fight for recognition. You rest in your assignment. You're not driven by insecurity. You're directed by intimacy with God. That kind of posture doesn't happen by accident. It's a choice made in quiet moments before the noise begins. There is also peace that flows from surrender. Not just peace with God, but peace with yourself. You stop needing to be perfect. You stop trying to earn approval. You start to move from a place of already being loved, already being seen, already being chosen. That identity is rooted in the presence of God, and it is unlocked when the heart lays down its striving. Surrender says, God, I'm not going to pretend. I need you. I want you to lead. I trust that your ways are better than mine. And when that trust is real, peace follows. Not circumstantial peace, but foundational peace. The kind that allows you to rest even when there's pressure, to be still even when there's noise. Surrender also shifts how we approach the people around us. A surrendered heart is less defensive, less reactive, more compassionate, more available. You start to see others through God's eyes instead of your wounds. You begin to listen more, serve more, love more deeply because you're not operating out of fear or ego. You're operating out of overflow. And that overflow doesn't come from doing more. It comes from surrendering more. You start the day full, not because everything is perfect, but because your source is eternal. And when people encounter you, they're encountering a reflection of the one who's been leading your steps since morning. There will be days when surrender feels hard, days when you'd rather take control. Days when your faith feels fragile and your trust feels thin. But even on those days, the choice to surrender is still powerful. God doesn't require perfection. He responds to honesty. Even if it feels small, it opens the door for God to do something big, because a surrendered heart isn't defined by feeling, it's defined by willingness. And God can do more with a willing heart than we can do with 1,000 perfect plans. Each morning is a fresh invitation to choose surrender again, to lay down yesterday's burdens, tomorrow's worries, and today's uncertainties, and to say, God, lead this day, lead my mind, lead my emotions, lead my mouth, lead my motives. I want what you want. He wants. I trust where you're taking me. That kind of prayer may not instantly change your circumstances, but it will change you. And when you change, everything you touch starts to shift. That's the power of a God-led day. It begins with a surrendered heart, and it unfolds in supernatural ways. Not because we control it, but because we've entrusted it to the one who sees the end from the beginning. Confusion often thrives where clarity has not been invited. We live in a world where distraction is constant, voices are loud, and expectations press in from every side. In the middle of all this noise, it's easy to lose sight of what really matters, of what God is really saying, of where we're really supposed to be going. But when divine direction steps in, it cuts through the fog like sunlight through a storm. It doesn't always bring answers immediately, but it brings focus. It brings confidence that you are not walking blindly, that your steps are not wasted, that even your questions are being carried by a God who knows how to lead you when you don't know how to lead yourself. Divine direction isn't about God shouting over your life. It's about tuning your spirit to hear him in the stillness. It requires intention, patience, and trust. You don't stumble into clarity, you seek it. You make room for it by clearing out what doesn't serve it. Doubt, fear, toxic patterns, people pleasing, and self-reliance. All of these things are enemies of clarity. They cloud your vision and distort your discernment. But when God is invited to lead your day, clarity becomes your companion. Suddenly, the things that used to confuse you start to lose their grip. You begin to see relationships for what they are. You start to notice the difference between pressure and purpose. You can identify the enemy's distractions because now you know the sound of your shepherd's voice. There is something powerful that happens when divine direction becomes the guiding force of your day. You stop feeling tossed between choices. You stop second guessing every move, not because you always know the exact outcome, but because you're anchored in who's directing your steps. That kind of clarity is not always about details. It's about direction. It's about knowing which path to stay on, even when it's hard, which door not to force open, which opportunity to decline, which conversation to walk away from. These aren't always easy choices, but when you're aligned with divine direction, they're clear. Clarity is a gift that flows from obedience. Many times we wait for clarity before we obey, but God often calls us to obey before he clarifies. It's in the movement that the mystery starts to unfold. That's why divine direction requires trust. You may only get one step at a time. You may not see the full picture, but if God is leading, then the path is secure. You don't have to chase clarity through overthinking or anxiety. You pursue it through intimacy. When you stay close to God, clarity becomes a byproduct of the relationship. It shows up in moments of prayer, in whispers during worship, in quiet convictions that refuse to be shaken. Confusion is often the result of too many sources and not enough silence. We're bombarded with advice, opinions, algorithms, and expectations, but divine direction simplifies what life complicates. It reminds you that you don't need everyone's input. You need God's instruction. It shifts your dependency from people to the presence of God. You learn that clarity doesn't always mean comfort. Sometimes the clearest direction takes you into uncomfortable obedience. But even there, God provides peace because clarity isn't about ease, it's about assurance. And when you are assured that you are where God wants you, doing what he's called you to do, you can endure anything with grace. Clarity doesn't just help you move forward, it helps you stay still when needed. Divine direction teaches you when to wait, when to rest, when to stop striving. Not every season is for movement. Some are for development. Some are for healing. Some are for pruning. Without divine direction, we'll rush what God is still refining. We'll force what God is still forming. But when he leads, he lets you know when it's time to pause and when it's time to press. That's why divine direction is not just about knowing the next thing. It's about knowing how to carry yourself in the current thing. It's about being faithful with the now while trusting God with the next. Divine direction brings clarity in relationships. You start to discern who is aligned with your purpose and who is assigned to your past. You stop investing your energy in trying to fix people who were never meant to walk with you into your fix. You begin to value your peace over your popularity. Clarity reveals what connection is covenant and what connection is convenience. It helps you set boundaries, not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom. You start to guard your time, your heart, your spirit, because you understand the weight of your assignment. You're no longer led by emotion, you're led by revelation. There is clarity that only comes through consecration. When you take time to be set apart, to unplug from the noise, to lean into God's presence, things that once felt chaotic start to make sense. It's not that life gets less messy. It's that your perspective gets more mature. You begin to see pain as preparation. You understand that delay is not denial. You recognize that what looked like rejection was actually redirection. These are revelations that don't come from scrolling or venting or striving. They come from stillness. Because when you're stillness, from being led, not pushed, from trusting that God's voice is stronger than the volume of your fears. Sometimes clarity comes through conviction. Divine direction doesn't always affirm, it corrects. It checks your motives, realigns your heart, interrupts your ego. It brings clarity about where pride has crept in, where forgiveness is needed, where submission has been lacking. And instead of resenting that correction, you start to welcome it. Because now you understand that it's not punishment, it's pruning. God corrects those he calls. And the more you yield to that correction, the clearer your vision becomes. You start to lead with humility. You stop defending dysfunction. You become a person who can carry vision with integrity. There are places God wants to take you that confusion cannot go. Confusion will talk you out of open doors. It will paralyze your progress. It will cause you to delay destiny in the name of indecision. But divine direction breaks that cycle. It gives you clarity that empowers movement. It reminds you that clarity is not just about intellect, it's about revelation. It's the deep knowing in your spirit that says, even if I don't know everything, I know this is where God has me. That kind of clarity produces confidence that cannot be stolen by circumstance. It anchors you in purpose. It protects your peace. Clarity also shows up in unexpected places. Sometimes it comes through pain, through closed doors, through disappointments, through things not going the way you planned. Divine direction isn't always the loud yes. It's sometimes the loving no. And the clarity that comes from those no's is what prepares you for the yes that's worth the wait. God doesn't owe us an explanation, but he often gives us insight. And when we look back, we start to see how divine direction protected us even when we didn't understand it. That hindsight becomes wisdom, that wisdom becomes discernment, and that discernment makes space for a life that is both grounded and guided. In order to walk in divine direction, you have to be willing to let go of what's familiar. Clarity often requires courage. You have to leave behind what no longer fits. Step away from the opinions that shaped your identity. Choose obedience over approval. Choose growth over comfort. These are not easy choices, but they are necessary if you want to be led by God and not just inspired by Him. Being led means being willing to go where He sends, even if it costs you, even if it stretches you, even if it doesn't make sense to others. Because clarity from God isn't always understood by people. But when your steps are ordered, you don't need validation, you just need vision. Divine direction won't always make life easier, but it will make it clearer. You'll begin to navigate conflict with grace, make decisions without regret, pursue opportunities with purpose, say no with peace, say yes with wisdom. You'll stop settling for things that look good but aren't God. You'll stop trying to create your own doors and start trusting that what's for you won't miss you. You'll stop chasing clarity through hustle and start receiving it through surrender, because divine direction isn't a formula, it's a relationship. And the more you lean into that relationship, the more your life starts to reflect heaven's design. Peace is not the absence of problems. It is the presence of divine order in the midst of them. When God leads your life, it doesn't mean storms won't come. It means you'll know where to anchor when they do. Chaos is inevitable in this broken world, but peace is the promise of those who are being led by the Spirit. It is not a fragile peace based on circumstances. It is a supernatural peace rooted in trust. Trust that God sees what you don't. Trust that His leadership is perfect, even when the path is unfamiliar. Trust that even in the places you feel most